Good evening, everyone. My name is Corinne Corbett, and I'm the editorial director at Black Health Matters. On behalf of the president and founder of Black Health Matters, Rosalind Young Daniels, and the entire Black Health Matters family, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here tonight. Our hosts for the program tonight are Dr. Angela Jourdain of Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated and Valerie Bird, the chapter president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women of Columbia, South Carolina, along with the Obesity Action Coalition, another partner, which we will tell you more about later in the program. Before I ask Dr. Jourdain and President Bird to bring us greetings tonight, let me share a little bit about them. Dr. Angela R. Jourdain is a graduate of Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, where she obtained a BS degree in natural science. She decided to pursue her passion for being a nurse and entered the Philip Beth Israel School of Nursing, where she completed her degree in 2002. Additionally, she holds a Master's of Science degree in Nursing Administration with Informatics from Malloy College and a doctorate in Public Health from Walton University. Dr. Jourdain is an active member of several local, national, and international organizations whose missions are grounded in public service, including Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated for Professional Nurses, Kappa Eta Chapter since 2004. She currently serves as the 20th Northeast Regional Director, overseeing over 40 chapters across 14 states and the District of Columbia, where she enthusiastically lends her visionary leadership in the execution of programs for the community and nursing professionals. Dr. Jourdain's commitment to the highest standards of nursing excellence and community service are evident by her professional and civic achievements. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Valerie Bird. Valerie Bird is the third president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Columbia, South Carolina chapter. Since joining this illustrious organization in 2017, her enthusiasm and leadership has enabled further advancement of NCBW's mission, visions, goals, and core values beyond the Columbia Midlands area. During her tenure, she has had the pleasure of meeting with the First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, to discuss societal, women, and girl concerns. President Bird is an accomplished information technology professional and educator with over 20 years' experience in facilitating state and federal programs which support educational technology in public schools and higher education institutions. The South Carolina native serves on several committees and state boards, as well as national K-12 educational technology advisory committees. President Bird enjoys mentoring young girls to support preparedness for college and career readiness. She's a member of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated's Beta Beta Zeta chapter. Dr. Jourdain and President Bird, please bring us your greetings.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Greetings to all of our esteemed members of Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated. On behalf of the over 40 chapters and 13 states and District of Columbia that I proudly serve as the 20th Northeast Regional Director and Chair of the Board of Directors, I bring you greetings. Chi Eta Phi Sorority was founded October 16th, 1932, at what was then called Freedmen's Hospital, which we now know as Howard University Hospital. We were established by 12 courageous nurses who, due to the color of their skin, were not permitted admission to the American Nurses Association at that time and decided to found our illustrious organization. Since our founding, we have grown to over 8,000 members. We span across the United States, and we are an ethnically diverse organization of registered nurses and nursing students. And we are guided by our motto, Service for Humanity. I would like to thank our esteemed presenter this evening, Dr. Winful, to the Coalition of 100 Black Women for partnering with us, to the Obesity Action Coalition, and of course to Black Health Matters for inviting us to bring you this dynamic presentation. Thank you again for the opportunity to serve our humanity in our service for humanity, and we hope that you enjoy this evening's presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Bird, and I am very excited and very grateful to Black Health Matters and others that invited us to partake in this event and upcoming webinar that's in a few weeks, I believe. It is an honor to join you all tonight. NCBW is a 501(c) tax-exempt organization that was founded in 1981. I bring you greetings on behalf of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Incorporated, or NCBW as it refers to. Our national president, Virginia Harris, the Columbia, South Carolina chapter, board of directors, and members. The coalition's mission is to advocate on the behalf of Black women and girls, to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment, as well as public policy, legislation that supports advocacy. Our vision is to see that Black women and girls live in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist. Our core values are gender equity, inclusion, respect, racial and social justice, integrity, accountability, economic empowerment, and collaboration. NCBW is concerned about the well-being of the whole community and the whole person, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Our primary focus as far as health advocacy is in the areas of family and childhood obesity, cancer and health disparities, and metabolic disease. NCBW's health and wellness priorities are to raise awareness about disparities and solutions, to provide access to healthcare and wellness information that promotes behavioral changes, to result in healthier lifestyles for our young people and our communities. We hope that you will be inspired to share the information that's provided during this educational program this evening with your friends, your family, and your communities. We also invite you to, again, join us for future events that are hosted by NCBW, Black Health Matters as well, because Black health does matter. Thank you all, and help us support our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Jourdain and President Byrd. Before we get started with our program, just a little bit of housekeeping. For this online discussion, all attendees will be in listen mode only. At the conclusion of the presentations, the Q&A will open for you to submit your confidential questions, and following our event, resources will be made available for anyone who would like more information. And now, a little bit about tonight's presenter, Terralyn Scott Winfield, MD. Dr. Scott Winfield earned her medical degree from Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. She then completed her residency in internal medicine from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, in gastroenterology at UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas. She's board certified in gastroenterology and obesity medicine and is a member of the American Gastroenterological Association, American College of Gastroenterology, the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, and the Obesity Medicine Association. Her special interests are inflammatory bowel disease and weight regain after bariatric surgery. Welcome, Dr. Scott Winfield. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Black Health Matters for having me. I'm delighted to talk to you today, and just a little bit extra about me. Yes, I am a gastroenterologist, but after 20 years of practicing medicine, I realized that there was a piece that I was missing. I have the saying that all healthcare providers are treating obesity. It's just that some are doing a better job than others. And my goal and my aim is to do a better job of it. So we can go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So our objectives this evening are one, to review the definitions of healthy weight versus unhealthy weight, to discuss who is most affected by unhealthy weight and the medical conditions that are associated with this, discuss the role of nutrition, physical activity, and behavior changers that contribute to a healthy weight. And then lastly, we'll discuss the role of medical treatments in achieving and maintaining a healthy weight. Next slide. So the first question is, what is a healthy weight? And there are different metrics and indices that we can use to measure this. I'm sure you all are aware of the body mass index, or BMI, but also important is body fat percentage as well as waist circumference. These play a role when the BMI can be difficult to interpret. Next slide. So when we talk about the body mass index, this is a index that it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. It's most useful for research purposes. When we apply it to the general population, that's where the other indices are important to look at. But in general, these broad categories of underweight, healthy weight, overweight can help us start to, as a starting point, to be able to stratify if a patient potentially has a problem. But it's one thing to note when it comes to some of the research that has been done. When you look at the risk of having an unhealthy body mass index, for every 5 points over 30, the BMI, that is equivalent to taking about 5 to 7 years off your life expectancy, which is similar to the effects of smoking. Next slide. So another index that's important to look at is body fat percentage. And it's of note that it changes based on if you're male or female. We get a little bit of a break being female is primarily just come of being having children and the way our bodies are made. So what's acceptable for a female patient may be a considered increased body fat in a male patient. But it's also important to note that you can have a normal body mass index, have an elevated body fat percentage or unfavorable body composition, and still be pretty unhealthy. Next slide, please. Waist circumference is also an index that it's important to look at, primarily because this is one of the metrics that is associated with metabolic disease. Having a waist circumference in general of 35 in women and 40 in men can be associated with increased risk of diabetes, heart disease, and high cholesterol. But it's also important to note that that changes based on ethnic background. So for Black patients, having a lower waist circumference is a cutoff, as well as Latino and Asian patients. And this has been demonstrated in studies. Next slide. So one thing to note is that most adults have more adults have an unhealthy weight than do not. This slide comes from the Center for Disease Control. Not really any newer data on this, but as you can see from 1999 until 2018, that graph of the patients who have class 1 obesity and then those that have severe obesity, it's just going up. There was a slight dip around the pandemic beginning, but it continues to go up over time. And this slide has to do primarily with the US, but worldwide, this is also becoming a problem with increasing weight over time. Next slide. I do want to this slide, we showed that 42% of adults have an unhealthy weight, and then those with a severe obesity, almost 10%. But it also is present in our kids, and it kind of tracks actually as far as those who have the increased risk. So in our country, Black women have the highest rate of obesity, about 58%, and then Hispanic men. And you can see at the slide, it's actually the same. Black girls have a higher rate of obesity and Hispanic boys. And there is still literature showing that how do you prevent someone from having an unhealthy weight or obesity? You have to start with their parents and grandparents. Um, Next slide, please. So this is kind of a busy slide, but it shows a lot because unhealthy weight is associated with so many medical complications. I mentioned before how most healthcare practitioners are treating weight, and some are doing a better job than others, primarily because we often treat the problem when we're not really getting to one of the root causes. And so when it comes to GI, which is my first love, you can see a lot of problems, reflux, colon polyps, fatty liver disease, gallstones, and several different types of cancers that are primarily GI. But I want to note that there are 22 cancers in general that are associated with obesity. I not infrequently see patients from oncologists who are sent to my practice to help with weight loss as they are also dealing with a cancer diagnosis. Um, Next slide, please. So this slide was more germane when I first did this talk a few years ago. But what I wanted to note that initially at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we were seeing, lots of people were getting sick, unfortunately, a lot of deaths. But it was notable that a large number of patients, young patients, were having severe complications of COVID, and it primarily had to do with their comorbidities. And the number one was obesity. You can go ahead and click the next little slide. I think it's a little, yes. So here you see that from ages on patients age 18 to 49 who ended up being hospitalized with COVID. 59% had obesity, and it was less so in patients who were older. And so we may have gotten caught by this pandemic, but hopefully we can be healthier and do well with the next pandemic. Okay, next slide, please. So here are some strategies to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. And that includes nutrition, physical activity, behavior, and medical therapy. Next slide. When it comes to nutrition, it's important to note two things: the quality of what we're eating as well as the quantity. Next slide. Quality comes to what we're eating. Unfortunately, a lot of us have succumbed to the SAD diet, and that's the standard American diet, which is filled with processed foods. But what's better and also has us to have an ingrained or automatic portion control is having whole foods, foods that have been processed or refined as little as possible. Next slide. So examples are having apples versus applesauce, fresh peaches versus canned peaches, still cut oats versus instant oatmeal, which is very processed, potatoes versus potato chips, fish versus fish sticks, and then actually having chicken instead of having chicken nuggets. Okay, next. And also fruit instead of fruit juices. This is really, really important. So sometimes we think that, oh, if I'm juicing, I'm doing good. No, not really, because basically you're taking out the good part of the fruit, the fiber, and those things and that are helping you, and just you're left with just the water and the juice. It's really hard to overconsume fruit because it has ingrained portion control, automatic portion control. So you don't see anybody who's eating a whole bushel of apples, but you can see someone drink a whole, gallon of apple juice real easily because it's easy to drink that. So it's really important to note about drinking your calories instead of eating them. Next slide. So also important, I mentioned before, you can click the button there, is having water versus sugar sweetened beverages. As far as here's there's a sign you see the Cokes and the Red Bull, but also sweet tea. I live in Texas and we love our sweet tea. As well as also here they love Dr. Pepper. And also too all those tasty drinks from Starbucks and whatnot. And so it's important to note that if you're drinking your calories, though they still count. So you might want to eat healthy, but then if you're drinking your sweet tea and those all of those sugar sweetened beverages, you're getting thousands of extra calories on a daily basis. Next slide. Quantity has to do with how much we eat, too much, how we eat, too fast, and how often we eat, too often. So all of these can lead to overfeeding, and so being mindful of, am I actually hungry or do I just want to eat? Is helpful. And so oftentimes in my evaluations to patients, I'm asking them, how often do you put food in your mouth? And they might say, oh, well, I only eat 3 times a day, but I mean, the snacks count too. Oh, actually, it's 7 times a day. So how much is important, how fast. If you're consuming your food within, 5, 10 minutes, your brain doesn't have time to talk to your stomach until you're full and you end up overeating. Next slide. This is the slide that just kind of I'll go over briefly, just showing what the macronutrients are like. And so when you consume protein, that's broken down and you make protein in your body. When you consume fat, which is actually important because you have some nutrients like fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, that need to be consumed with a little bit of fat. It goes to fat as well. However, when you consume too many carbohydrates, more than you need, that excess carbohydrate is processed by your body and it becomes fat. That's part of the background why low carbohydrate diets or even those that are ketogenic can potentially help because you're depriving your body of carbohydrates, so it's forced to use your fat as energy. Next slide. Physical activity, two types, NEAT and also exercise. Next. So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's the burning of energy that you do with just your regular daily activities, walking into the office from your car, doing, housework, gardening. Those things they do count, and that contributes to a portion of your energy expenditure, but it's different from exercise, which is purposeful movement for the purpose of improving your health. Next. And so when it comes to exercise, it's important to get enough for the purpose of which you're reaching it for. So for general health benefits, it's recommended by the Academy of Sports Medicine to get about 150 minutes a week. However, if you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to not regain the weight that you lose, in general, you're going to need to work out about 300 minutes a week, which ends up being about an hour a day. And you have to include resistance because that's going to help you maintain your muscle mass. Next slide. Behavior is important as well. And some of the key ones that I talk to my patients about are sleep quality, also busyness, and then also addressing some of the mental health challenges that can prevent us from being able to continue to have or keep a healthy weight. Next slide. Sleep is important because having too little or having too much is associated with having excess weight. So some of the things that could contribute to that is having obstructive sleep apnea, shift work, having insomnia, binge watching, Netflix. And so if you have less than 6 hours and more than 9 hours of sleep on a regular basis, it could contribute to your weight because when you're sleep deprived, your hunger hormone, ghrelin, it goes up. Next slide. Behavior, making room for change. I've had one patient recently that I saw and she wanted to lose weight, but she was really busy. She had a full-time job. She had a part-time job that she was doing on the side, and she also was going to school. So I was like, well, if you're trying to lose weight, and for instance, you got to work out an hour a day, then something has to give. And so we discussed ways for her to make room for the changes that are needed to lose weight and also to maintain them. She ended up finding someone to help her with her side business, and that gave her extra time to be able to exercise. Next slide. Behavior is really important, specifically addressing unaddressed mental health challenges. One thing is at the bottom, but I'm going to say it first, are ACEs, adverse childhood events. It's important to address that. Whenever I talk to my patients, I ask them, when was the very first time in your entire life you recognized you had a problem with your weight? And like the very first pound that you gain, and we often go back down to their childhood where they may have had parents who had problems with their weight. They may have had come from a family where there's divorce, there's loss, parental deaths or abuse. And it's really important to address that because oftentimes children, some of their coping mechanisms have to do with food. They feel bad. They don't have a therapist, but they have access to sugar, and they end up developing these habits that carry forward into adulthood. Depression, anxiety, abuse, unresolved grief and loss, and then also eating disorders. So it's important to address that because if you're dealing with the nutrition, physical activity, but you haven't addressed these things, then you're going to have not the best outcome for what your goals are with your weight management. Next slide. Medical therapy. This is important because everything else I've said until now, you can probably get on the internet. But when it comes to medical therapy, that's where you need to have a physician or healthcare provider be able to discuss with you what some options are for you. And next slide. So when it comes to medical therapy, as far as medicines versus surgery, a couple things are important. Sometimes there are medications that can actually contribute to weight gain. Some antidepressants, some blood pressure medications. A big one is prednisone. I've had patients who had severe asthma and were on prednisone a lot. And so we had to get their asthma under control, get them off prednisone to be able to stop that weight positive force. But I don't have patients to stop their medications until that prescribing doctor is on board with that. And then there are also medications out there that can help to patients with the weight loss. They address the hormonal changes that are present in unhealthy weight, help patients be comfortable with eating less, but they work best with nutrition, physical activity, and behavioral changes because if you don't address your nutrition, you don't exercise, and you're not dealing with your mental health, you take that medication, you're only going to get a percentage of the benefit of that plan. Next slide. There are also surgery is an option. It's actually the best tool that we have. The options I mentioned here are gastric sleeve, gastric bypass, and duodenal switch. They are not a last ditch effort. They should be the first effort, according as far as I'm concerned. However, they some of the newer medical treatments out there can also sometimes even achieve the same percentage of weight loss with surgery. But even surgery is a tool because I'm sure anyone on the call or on this webinar have had friends, relatives, and neighbors who have had surgery, lost weight, and gained it back because it's only a tool. If you don't follow the rules of nutrition, physical activity, and exercise, that you need to behavioral changes, then you could potentially gain that weight back. And I've seen it before. Next slide. So successful weight loss is like a puzzle. Nutrition, physical activity, behavior, they all work together and they all going to have a different percentage that it contributes to someone's weight loss. Sometimes it's a lot of nutrition, sometimes it's physical activity, sometimes it's dealing with behavior, but it's a puzzle. And by figuring out where those puzzle pieces lie, it can help you to have success with your weight loss. Next slide. So, in conclusion, okay, by BMI, body fat percentage, waist circumference, they can all be used to assess if you have a healthy weight or not. Black and brown people are more affected by unhealthy weight and those medical conditions that are associated with unhealthy weight. You need to have nutrition, physical activity, and behavioral changes. to help to contribute to achieving those weight goals. And the medical treatments include medication, surgery, and sometimes both can help in achieving and maintaining a healthy weight, but it has to be done in conjunction with changes in nutrition, exercise activity, and also behavior changes. The key thing is talk to primary care or a specialist who is trained in helping patients achieve a healthy weight. And if you have concerns about your weight. And next slide. Thank you. That is my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Scott Winfield, for such an informative and actionable presentation. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our patient ambassador, Keisha Calicut, from Obesity Action Network. From Obesity Action Coalition, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to giving a voice to the millions of Americans impacted by obesity, empowering them along their journey toward better health. Keisha Calicut is a dynamic educator specializing in special education and a passionate health advocate. She's a founding member of the Obesity Action Coalition's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, a disease experience expert panel member with Novo Nordisk, and a board member of the Educator Collective. When she isn't jet setting around the globe, spreading the word about equity in healthcare, you can find her making music for her students, hiking with her family, or scolding her two disobedient stepdogs. Keisha, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here in the presence of all this greatness tonight. Once again, I'm Keisha Calicut, a member of the Obesity Action Coalition. I am involved in numerous advocacy avenues, whether it's education or healthcare. But actually, the thing about which I am most passionate is a manuscript where I will be receiving author credit in the American Journal of Public Health. It's titled Ending Weight Stigma to Advance Health Equity. And I am going to talk about the way that I bring together the puzzle pieces to find success in my life. So with behavior, for me, if it's out of sight, it is out of mind. I like to say that my lazy trumps my hungry, so that if I don't have the iced oatmeal cookies in there, I will not eat them. If I don't have the Chester's hot fries, which I absolutely love, I will not eat them. Another behavior that I believe is integral to success is to put the count and accountability. Every day you might count your calories, weigh your food, track your food, weigh yourself. I know that for me, I actually count my carbohydrates, and I also weigh myself daily. That might not work for a lot of people, but it actually works for me. Another thing that I do is I track my blood sugar by wearing a CGM. When it comes to the nutrition piece, it's not just the food that you eat, it's your vitamins, minerals, trace elements. So I make sure that I supplement every day. Also, when it comes to food choices, I eat things that are good for my body or are good for my mouth. So 85% of the time, I am eating from the rainbow. I am choosing fruits, vegetables, meats, and eating from those food groups. But if I am going to have something, I am going to absolutely enjoy it. A lot of times I'll bring in pizza from these chain restaurants at school. I don't eat it. It doesn't make me happy. But there is a pizzeria down the street called Joe's, and they have the absolute best thin crust pizza. And for that, I will make an exception. And as Dr. Scott Winfield said, I don't drink my calories. I would much rather eat them. When it comes to the activity piece for me, I found the things that I love. I love being outside. I love the fresh air in my hair and on my face. And so I hike a lot. That's an activity that I can do by myself, or that's an activity like I can do with my family. And with the hiking piece, it's I can do it almost anywhere. Lately, the weather has been conspiring against me. It has just been too cold and rainy. So I found some really wonderful videos that I can do at home from the comfort of my living room on YouTube. And when I have a few extra minutes at work, I can just do one of those as well. The non-exercise activity thermogenesis that Dr. Scott Winfield spoke about, which is getting purposeful movement throughout the day that's not necessarily dedicated exercise. So I take the steps when I can, when my knee's not hurting. I do take the elevator some days if it's a little cold, but yeah, taking the steps, parking farther out, taking the cart back to the corral, like when you're shopping. Those are wonderful ways to get that extra bit of thermogenesis. Now, when it comes to the medical piece, I am very pro-choice with however it is that you and your healthcare provider decide to treat your obesity. So for surgery, there are several different options, some that are restrictive, some that offer a malabsorption component. For me, I did the sleeve almost 14 years ago. And so, with the behavior, nutrition, activity, and medical pieces of the puzzle all together, I have managed to keep off more than 125 pounds for 14 years. So, you're going to have to find what works for you. And it could be a prescription, it could be surgery, but it's a very individual decision. And when it comes to medical, it's not all pharmacological. When we think medical, we have to think about whole health. So, harkening back to something that Dr. Scott Winfield said about trauma and adverse childhood events affecting your weight trajectory, it's important to find a good counselor. It's important to find a good therapist. It's important to find a good support group. Um, there's lots of resources online. There's actually still in-person support groups. I actually, we haven't been as active as we could have been because of COVID, but I am actually chair of a in-person support group here in the Dallas, Texas area. But yeah, those are the ways that as I clock in every day. I have a W-2 job, just like y'all, a business owner, a mom, a teacher, an entertainer. These are the ways that even with all of that, I have managed to successfully keep off 125 pounds with these puzzle pieces. So thank you.
Keisha, thank you so much for sharing your story and insights with us tonight. Amazing and inspiring that you've kept up 125 pounds. And this webinar has been made possible from an educational grant from Novo Nordisk. So we thank them as well. So on behalf of the Black Health Matters team and tonight's partners, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you found this webinar beneficial and have a wonderful night.